Well, good morning officially, and welcome to the first of three Fielding Forward meetings this morning. I hope that your computer is cooperating with you. Let's start with some information perhaps that you need to know with regard to the go-to meeting. Your microphone is automatically muted upon joining. You need to make sure that your speakers are on in order to hear the presentation. Now, you'll not have access to your webcam. Also, realize this, when we get into the program, Steve Johnson is going to be presenting for us this morning. You can utilize that question feature over on the right-hand side of your screen. You can ask questions. We'll field those here at the headquarters in Mahomet, and we'll try to factor those in as we come into the Q&A portion of the program. I would also share for you that our presenter today is going to be asking some polling questions inside, so you'll have the opportunity to interact as a group as we look at risk management and marketing here for the 21 crop year. Also, you should be aware that there is a one-page handout, and again, we're looking at this computer thing, so you may have to adjust your glasses, but look over to the side and you'll see that there is a handouts tab. If you'll look in that handouts tab, then you'll be able to see the information that we have for you today. If you are eligible for a learning incentive, an email will be sent to you immediately following this meeting. Attendee names are going to be recorded at the end of the program. Notice we said at the end of the program, so stay with us. Those indicating that they need a voucher will receive one email, so be sure and check your spam, your junk folder, and other things that might get in the way. My name's Jeff Nalley. I'm a farm broadcaster here in Illinois and across the region. Glad to be with you. A year ago, we were still holding these meetings in person, but this year, because of the COVID situation, we've been forced to virtual means, as have so many different events. American Farm Bureau just finished their virtual event. Illinois Farm Bureau had to go virtual. Commodity Classic has already been announced that it's going virtual this year. We lost the Farm Progress Show in Iowa last year. We're looking forward to Farm Progress being back in Decatur this year and hoping to have COVID put to bed by that time so that we will be able to come to Decatur and celebrate time together. I do appreciate so much American Farm Bureau President Zippy Duvall and the Farm Bureau stance of the shirts that they're selling now for Feeding America, but the statement of still farming. While the rest of the country was in lockdown and there was so much concern about so many different things, and rightfully so, you were the folks who put the hand to the plow, that went to the field, that did the things that needed to be done, still farming. And despite the challenges of weather and regulation and markets and all the rest, you were still getting the job done. And I don't think there's enough credit that can be thrown to our producers, for you and your families, for the retailers, for those who are involved in this industry. We found a way to adapt and we found a way to get it done. I would like to offer one comment this morning. It appeared in AgriPulse this morning in their Daybreak program. Yesterday, in his last hours of office, former now Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue offered a number of farewell treats. You might have seen those if you follow Sonny on Twitter. But this is one quote that I wanted to say, and I thought this was really telling of him and his service during his time and tenure at USDA. He said, quote, "During my visits to farms in all 50 states, I've learned that while accents and commodities may vary, and they do, the heart of the farmer remains the same. Agriculture is a selfless profession of men and women who strive to feed a growing population." That a quote from our former Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue, from Georgia. So we have a whole program for you today that is dedicated, you might say, toward marketing. Let's talk about that more of risk management and not just guessing or trying to forecast where the highs and lows of the market are going to be, but let's talk about this from a risk management standpoint. And Steve Johnson will be coming up here in just a few moments. I'm going to go ahead and share a promo with you, and we're going to talk about this more at the end of the program. But today, Steve Johnson from Iowa State, who is recently retired. We'll get into that in a second. Next week, you want to be sure and be a part of the program. Illinois' own Eric Snodgrass, the Chief Atmospheric Scientist for Nutrient Ag Solutions. Eric's going to be alongside. He'll give us an update on what he sees in terms of climate for Brazil and for Argentina. We'll talk about the fading La Nina, but how long that it may persist. What does it mean for the Southern Hemisphere? And as well, what does it mean for North America and our growing season? The balance of our winter, but also for the growing season. And then our third week out, the 1st of February, we'll give you the dates on those. We'll have Matt Bennett of agmarket.net and Steve Johnson. We'll be together in a panel discussion, and we'll be kicking markets around and other risk management tools there as well. So plenty of information coming for you in our Fielding Forward meetings. Now, before we get to Steve Johnson from Iowa State, we would like to offer this from you from Farm Credit Illinois and Crop Insurance.
We started with not much of anything in farming. We had to borrow all of our money to buy everything we've ever bought. So we always had to have some kind of insurance in case we did have a bad crop, that we could make our payments and keep expanding.
Crop insurance is a tool that gives you a guaranteed income at the beginning of the year in order to start setting your budget off the get-go, in order to make the best profits and make the best decisions throughout the growing season, and not wishing at the end of the growing season knowing where your revenue is going to be. When
I first started farming, I worried about everything. So if you had a dry spell in the summer, I didn't sleep, and I worried and worried and worried. In mid-2000, when we started getting crop insurance, I could actually sleep and rest because I knew I was guaranteed X amount of dollars per acre at the end of the year.
Good thing about Farm Credit Crop Insurance is we specifically deal with crop insurance, and that allows us to get out and have more time with our customers and familiarize ourselves with the areas, with the customers, with our products. That way, whenever we have a question, we know it off the cuff, and we can give them timely answers and timely knowledge with the questions that they have.
I really don't look at the premium cost. I look at more the guaranteed. And mainly we'll sit down with my crop advisor and we'll kind of discuss what we want to do. This coming year, we're going to plant all soybeans before we ever go to corn. As soon as the ground's ready, we're going to be planting soybeans. All the data shows, 4, 5, 6 bushel increase on soybeans the earlier we plant.
It's always great to go into the planting season with a plan in place, but unfortunately those plans can get ruined by maybe too much rain or an early frost. Those unfortunate events can be covered by a replant endorsement that allows a customer to go out and make those decisions whenever they seem fit.
I look at crop insurance right along with my banker. Far as a family farm that's wanting to expand, your banker, your crop insurance, and so forth, people that you work with is either going to make your operation or break your operation.
And certainly decision time for crop insurance is coming up. Now's the opportunity for us to look at our own operations and also work with your farm credit representative and look at the crop insurance that you need for the year ahead. Well, we pay attention to the calendar. It is now year 2021. Is the 21st. And our speaker this morning is coming to us from Iowa. He spent 21 years at Iowa State University. And today he is a part of our program. So put all the 21s together and see if there's magic. Steve Johnson is with us. He was the Farm and Ag Business Management Specialist in Central Iowa for Iowa State, just retiring just a few days ago. Now, he specializes in topics related to government farm programs, to crop insurance, to crop marketing, to grain contracts, to farm leasing, and other risk management strategies. Now, Steve and I, we had a chance yesterday to talk for a few minutes, and Steve, you gave me a challenge, and I'm so encouraged by this. You said, I want questions, and I want really tough questions. So you can utilize that questions tab, but I'm going to start with the most difficult question from the beginning, okay? And I'm hoping by the end of your presentation, you can offer this that we can all take advantage of, okay?
I'm ready.
Powerball. I need it.
Yes.
I need the numbers.
It's too late. There was a winner last night in Maryland. Sorry.
Well, no, but it'll come around again. It'll come around again, Steve. But if I could just close my eyes and hit that Powerball, then I wouldn't have to worry about marketing. So that's the big one. It'll climb back up again.
Yeah, keep your day job, Jeff. Keep your day job.
Thanks for being here. We're looking forward to your presentation. And again, Q folks listening, there's going to be some opportunities for you to participate in this. And obviously, we do look forward to your questions. Steve, I'm sorry we can't be here in person, shake hands, but I'm glad virtually we have that, and so encouraged to get your views on risk management here in 2021.
Great, I appreciate that, Jeff. Hopefully you can see my slides. And you had a handout. There were actually 3 handouts. There was a fielding forward handout, my presentation, just 24 PowerPoint slides. And then we just wrote a brand new publication called Supplemental Coverage Option and Enhanced Coverage Option. I'm going to be talking about that today. And so make sure that you see on little box there to the side, SEO, ECO endorsements. ECO is brand new in 21. And so we'll tie that into a risk management. So what I'd like to do, and I like teaching in webinar fashion. I've been doing fielding forward for 6 straight years. So this will be lucky number 7. And it forces me to teach in a different style. I teach faster. And so you see my slides, and I give you some chances to process what I'm going to talk about today. You can see it's not just about prices. It's a multitude of things that we can do right now, the 21st day of January, as a segue to what we're going to do to be managing risk for this 21 crop. So let's start today by making sure we understand what USDA told us last week. That was a bullish report, and the market was lock limit up on the 12th day of January. And so we see ending stocks at levels that we've not seen, forecast August 31st, at 1.552 billion bushel. Because of the tight ending stocks, the cash price is going to be 420. Now I'm going to tie the cash price. This is the MYA for the 20 crop. It's above 370, so there are no PLC payments. There's not going to be ARC PLC payments for the 20 crop, and we're going to tie in this 21 crop decision. But I want you to see that it's important. That 420 is a weighted average national cash price for the MYA 2021 marketing year. And then I'll be brief because I'm assuming that you've seen the USDA report, but I'm going to bring in some other information. And this is where I'm going to challenge you in your marketing, is we've got to be able to look not only backwards of what happened in 20, when we had a crop that was much smaller than anyone would have guessed. This was a 14.182 billion bushel corn crop in the US. At one time in June and July and August, we thought that was going to be a 15 billion bushel crop. But at the same time, we've got great demand. These total use numbers of 14.775 billion is really positive, and especially the export number. So our stocks to use ratio are going to fall to levels that we've not seen in 6 and almost 7 years. And the cash price, again, projected is going to be 420. But let's bring in a second opinion. Let's bring in somebody else that maybe doesn't have the same dog in the fight. I'm going to pick on an Illinois company. It's Advanced Trading. It's ATI. And last week, they released this information that's basically, will USDA be right or wrong? And the likelihood is USDA is going to be close, but they're not going to know these numbers, especially the cash price for the entire marketing year. So what you see in this middle column is ATI Trading for the 2021 crop, and you can see that they have a crop that's identical as far as the total supply. What's different is the demand, and this is now a demand-driven market. And so it'll be important to see the export numbers on Thursday mornings. It'll be important to see what the weather forecasts are, especially for South America. But it's still supply demand, but ending stocks get tighter. Cash prices, old crop, are going to be just a little bit higher than what USDA, this is the best guess from advanced trading. If I was in Iowa, I'd probably use Pro Farmer. If I was in Minnesota, I'd probably use Kleiss. If I was in Nebraska, I'd probably use Brugler. But I just want you to see the importance of market analysts, and especially those that might have a different opinion. Now look at the right-hand column. This is really important. What changes in the 21 crop? We're going to plant more corn acres. If we return to a trend line yield, we're going to produce that 15 billion bushel crop. It's just based on normal. Okay, I'm not trying to outguess the weather. And if exports and feed, food, and industrial just stay somewhat consistent, we're going to pull ending stocks lower. Stocks to use ratio falls, but look at the price, 425. That is an important part of today's decision. If that turns out to be the weighted average cash price, and I can get more than 425 for my new crop corn, I think you want to start focusing on the 21 crop, and that's my message today. I think we've got to recognize that we had an outlier. We had a black swan year, and we can see that from the seasonals. Every year I come to Fielding Forward, I always bring this updated seasonal trends. It's 21 years of data. It shows you that usually December corn futures index to 100 every January usually peak somewhere in this April, May, June timeframe, but that didn't happen. I don't disagree. We got some outlying factors, COVID, then we turned around and planted a crop early, and the market went lower, both corn and soybeans. And then we had weather problems in the late summer, and then we got this tremendous demand, especially from China. Do not throw that line graph out. About 85% of the time, the market tends to peak when the greatest uncertainty of producing the northern hemisphere crop. That's because 85% of the feed grains are in the northern hemisphere. 55% of the soybeans are in the southern hemisphere. So soybean prices are literally more volatile typically in this December, January, February timeframe. But I came up with an interesting table. And I want you to divide this table and look at 45 years of data, December corn only. And I want you to look at the lower half of the table as the low tick of December corn futures, and the upper half of the table as the high tick. There is no year like 2020. The low turned out to be in August, and the high, at least for that December contract, turned out to be in November. Now, I want to take the same information and let's take a look at a couple years that we're comparing to. Right now, we're comparing most of our old crop futures highs to 2013. In 2013, the December futures on a calendar year peaked in January. In 2014, the December corn futures peaked in April. I will not be surprised to see new crop December corn futures peak be much earlier than a normal year, because we've got the uncertainty focused on the 20 crop and not necessarily the 21 crop. Now, this is corn, and I am neutral to bullish corn. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to be surprised that the winter highs are in. The winter highs are in. And you can post a question and you can start challenging me. I love to be challenged. And so I think maybe a good indication of why these prices have rallied so much in the last 5 months has a lot to do with the U.S. ending stocks, even though the U.S. only produces about 40% of the world's corn and about 35% of the world's soybeans. So the corn and soybean stocks to use ratio are at levels that we've not seen. For corn, a level that we've not seen since the 2012-2013 crop. And for soybeans, stocks to use ratio that we've not seen since that same year, 2012-13. So the reality is it's these tight ending stocks, great demand in combination with South America weather that's given us the highest futures price levels in 6 years. Now, let's turn to soybeans, because soybeans are really the exciting crop, have been the exciting crop, because ending stocks are at the tightest levels since we've seen in 7 years. And that's why the price has rallied, and that's a national cash price. So subtract 840, the effective reference price, and that's why there are no PLC payments for soybeans and haven't been for the last 7 years of the Farm Bill. And again, this could get even more interesting, but South America has a lot to say about this. So I'm going to turn to that Illinois company, all right, based in Bloomington, and say, okay, we know what USDA said on the 12th day of January. Do you agree, ATI? And in essence, they say, yeah, we don't disagree with production. USDA is pretty good this time of year on production. And I know they pared down the 19 crop in September report that showed up as a quarterly. But look what they do with exports. They're keeping exports and crush at similar levels. And so the fact is that they're not saying USDA is wrong, but we've got a little more export demand coming at us. And that's likely because South America is not in a good position to export early. And so when we look at stocks to use and we look at price, stocks to use go down to a level that we've not seen in recent history. And our projected price goes up. Now, here's where I want your head right now. Let go of 20. And if you've got old crop bushels, God bless you. But what about 21? I think this is where I want your head today. I really want to be focusing here on 21. And what we see is we're going to plant more bean acres. No one disagrees with that. ATI is saying maybe 5.5 million. I think it's probably closer personally to 6 to 7 million acres. I think we're going to steal some acres out of winter wheat. In Iowa, we're probably going to plant more beans than we've ever planted because we had that major windstorm. We've got all sorts of corn on corn issues and volunteer issues. So you're going to see Iowa probably challenge Illinois for number one in soybean production in 21. But what we start to see is that we're going to likely have tight ending stocks, at least on August 31st. We'll be very dependent upon Brazilian production next year and demand. So even though we have tight ending stocks come August of 22, the projected price is going to be lower. And that's the importance of South America. If South America is producing 55% of the world's soybeans and we're producing 35%, we've covered pretty much 90%. The reality is that South America is an important focus. And Eric Snodgrass will be with you next week. So make sure you tune in to Fielding Forward next week. But I took this from Eric, and I'll be honest with you, I follow Eric every weekday, year round. I've got a special email list that I'm on, and this is what rocked the markets earlier this week. The rainfall forecast for next week, it's a futures market. The market's always looking forward. And suddenly we saw increased chances of better rains, especially in southern Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay, and Argentina. That is the extremely dry area of South America right now. And you say, well, Mato Grosso's not getting the rain. You're right, but they're getting ready to harvest. So you've got to imagine that the length of the soybean belt in South America would be like the US growing soybeans in Winnipeg and Central Florida. It's that long north to south. So they have an extremely long season And this safrinha crop, this second crop corn, is typically right there in the heart of Brazil. So as they harvest beans, and bean harvest is now underway, then they often turn around and plant a second crop called safrinha. So I think the focus now will be on exports Thursday mornings, and we saw some good numbers this morning, but we're going to be very focused on this rainfall in South America. And Eric's the best that I've ever followed. And so recognize that these forecasts are going to be critical. Once we get into late winter and we know the size of the South American crop, we're going to focus on what's going on in the Northern Hemisphere. And I'm going to turn back to ATI. I appreciate them sharing this information with me because I want to anticipate what will U.S. farmers do. They're going to plant more corn acres and they're going to plant more bean acres simultaneously. So type in those questions. I'm ready for you. I'm ready for you. Where are we going to get these acres? It's extremely dry. What will U.S. farmers do? But remember, last year we had 12 million acres of prevent plant. And so we're going to likely get most of those 9 to 10 million acres, in my opinion, 7 to 9 million more acres, ATI. We're probably going to get amount of acres that went to prevent plant, especially in the Dakotas and Minnesota and Wisconsin last year. And you remember 19, that was 19 million acres to prevent plant. So we're not going to have the competition from prevent plant. And the winter wheat acreage that USDA thought was probably going to be a little larger might not be quite as large, but we've got extreme weather conditions in some parts of the Western belt, especially the Northwest, that we might not see as many acres of wheat, especially spring wheat, because soybeans are going to compete. Soybeans are going to compete with cotton. Soybeans are going to compete with corn. And we've got a cap on CRP acres. So here's what I'm going to do today. Something that most people from the university would not do. I want you to determine what would be a reasonable futures price objective. So here's what I've been teaching for the last 20 plus years at Iowa State University. Just some simple strategies, and we're going to talk old and new crop. Limit the number of bushels you have in commercial storage. I hope you don't have any bushels in commercial storage. I don't mind storing beans unpriced, but not for long periods of time, maybe 2 months. By the middle of January, my beans that I've stored are gone, and South America uncertainty is playing out. And for corn, maybe it's just a little bit longer, and it has a lot to do with basis, but I'm paying those fixed costs of storage and interest. And then I like using marketing tools like Hedge to Arrive, forward cash contracts, or minimum price contracts, or selling cash and buying call options or buying put options. But think about separating this idea of locking the futures price from accepting the cash price simultaneously. My opinion, here are where the targets are. The targets that I've set for the March contract that expires in 5 weeks, because again, the first day of March, first notice day, May will take over as the nearby contract. If you can market in that 5 to 540, 541 and a half is the high. I think it's the winter high. And again, we've set back a little bit. I think these are great price levels. If you want to use the May or the July and hedge to arrive, wait for better basis. I have no problem. I think the best winter basis is behind us. It was probably sitting there in late December, early January, like it normally is. For soybeans, if you can capture old crop beans in that 13 to 14, again, we rallied to 1436 and a half last week. I think that was the blow off top, in my opinion. It's going to take some really adverse conditions and increased export numbers to think that we're going to blow to one of these $15 or $16 levels. And I'm concerned that too many of you are trying to pick the top and not managing risk. And I think the group that's done marketing, I applaud that group, because most of the advisors I follow are pretty much into that 90% to 100% of your old crops priced. And if you want to, again, use an HTA or some sort of minimum price contract, that's fine. But here's where my head is today, the 21st day of January. Should I be selling some new crop corn? In my opinion, absolutely. I think that if we can get December futures, we're there today. We've been there for about the last 3 weeks. If I can target December corn futures, and again, here's the questions. This is where you want to be typing in your questions because I'm ready for them. I think we will probably be in the top 10 to 20% of all the market prices if we have a portion of our new crop corn priced in this 440 to 465 level. 465 and a half is the high that came last week. I think that there might be a lid. I think this market right now is not putting a lot of risk into the 21 crop. Most of the commodity traders, especially the speculative funds, they've been bull spreading the market. So they're not trading December, they're trading the March and the May. And that's a good indication, is that's where the tight ending stocks are. The tight ending stocks aren't necessarily for the 21 crop. For soybeans, 11 to 12, and you cannot believe the number of farmers in Iowa that have $11 plus cash beans off the combine already sold. And so this idea that Iowa's rotating to more soybeans because of that weather, that event that we had last August. So I want to stop here, and Jeff, I'll bring you back on because here is where I want the questions. I love questions. I love people challenging me. So questions?
Yes, let's go this way. And this one's coming from me. You've got December corn right now at 450 and November soy at 1172. That's looking at the board right now. Knowing that you're going to talk about crop insurance coming up, Steve, what are the fundamentals that could be in this market in February that's going to establish our crop insurance prices? You can use options today for a strategy that would cost you money that you could build a floor in this market. We also have crop insurance as an option. So knowing that the February scale is going to be important, what do you think happens in the next 45, 60 days?
I don't think much happens. I think we're moving into a trading range for both old and new crop bushels. So I think we're probably going to trade in new crop futures, probably in a 20 to 30 cent range for corn, and maybe a 30 to 50 cent range. I don't think things are going to change. I think we're going to get a high February price that creates our crop insurance guarantees, also creates our premiums. And so we're going to pay more for crop insurance if we stay at the same level, same unit structure. So I think we're setting ourselves up, maybe not unlike 13, where we could sell a crop ahead. We could guarantee $700+ an acre. And just like the video said, I am more focused on guaranteeing revenue. I don't focus that much on premium. I want to create a crop risk management. So Jeff, in my opinion, the winter highs hold. We move to a trading range. We get a chance to sell new crop corn and beans at prices that we've not seen in 6 years. We weave our own safety net, and I'm fine. I've got a lot of farmers that are sold ahead, and there should be your question, is let's put together a risk management plan, and let's not just try to outguess where the highs are. The highs might have been last week, I'll be honest with you. And maybe that new crop high was this week in new crop corn. I really like these price levels and taking some risk off the table. Good question.
So then thinking about what you suggested, if the winter highs are in right now, so what's next? What's the, and what would be the cause and effect? Because we've already seen some commodity funds moving out of the soybean pit. We've seen them drifting out of old crop and more into new. So what's the next catalyst that could move this thing up if it happens?
I think you've got it. It's profit taking. It's the commodity funds that have made millions of dollars. And when they send those reports out at the end of January that says, hey, we're still $1.2 million ahead, they want to protect their profits. It'll be a fundamental shift. It'll probably be South American weather. or it'll be China canceling orders for US soybeans and moving that business to China. That tends to happen, especially in February. I think it'll be a fundamental shift, and it will appear as though South America is not in dire straits. Brazil's never been in dire straits. It's southern Brazil and Argentina, but that's when the funds have their sell stops on the market and they get out, just like they did 2 days ago. And so I want to make sure that I recognize there's going to be a lot of volatility, especially in old crop. And I just don't see that we've got to take new crop to levels that we were at last week, because the cure for high prices is high prices, and we're at high prices. And until we can get a weather event in the spring and summer in the Northern Hemisphere, I think the highs might be in.
So given the internal price that we have for corn and soy in China, are we rationing yet?
I don't think that we necessarily are rationing yet, but I don't think China cares. I think the reality is if they're building their hog herds and they need soybeans and they need soybean meal, they're going to buy those products. Again, they played a great game. They played a great game in July and August when they came in to make their early buys. But then as that market ratcheted up, they had to stay in the market. No, Jeff, maybe we haven't. But the reality is who is willing to pay these high prices when we know we've got Brazilian beans that are going to be floating in the next 30 days? And the likelihood is that we're probably not going to see the enthusiasm for beans as we've seen the last 2 months. Corn probably stays somewhat bullish because we don't produce a lot of corn. Less than 20% of the global corn is produced in the Southern Hemisphere. So I think you've got to be careful of thinking that we are going to always have price levels at what we have today. That's not reality. I think you saw that extra 9 to 10 million acres of corn and soybeans that get planted just in the US. I'm guessing that's what the Northern Hemisphere does. They respond by planting a lot more acres because of these high prices. But this audience has the ability to use revenue protection crop insurance, pre-harvest marketing like hedge to arrive or forward cash contracts. That's the advantage the U.S. farmer has over most of the world right now.
All right, Steve, we want to remind the folks that are participating again, go to your questions tab and offer questions for us. Steve, I have one more here before we move to a couple of those and then on into your program. With regard to Brazil, so let's say they get the rains. Maybe they don't have the astronomical production that was forecast earlier this year, but they still in Brazil produce a crop that was bigger than a year ago. If the crop comes in that particular range, not the highest that we've ever seen, but higher than a year ago, what's the downside in the soybean market, and how soon do we see that downside?
I think there's a 50-cent downside in old crop soybeans, and that will primarily be very dependent upon the availability of that South American crop. In my opinion, there's at least $1 downside in new crop soybeans. I think just like soybeans led us higher, I will not be surprised that soybeans lead us lower. And again, it doesn't happen overnight. Most of these types of rallies last somewhere between 5 and 9 months. We're out here at about 5.5 months right now. I just don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. Doing nothing has worked great for 5 months. I doubt that doing nothing works great for the next 5 months. Good questions. And any other questions?
So what percent of the 21 crop do you recommend selling today?
You know, I think a lot depends upon the grower's cost of production and those break-even prices, as well as their cash flow needs and where those bushels that are unpriced will be stored. But I have no problem with any farmer that has a reasonable break-even around that 330 to 350 range, having somewhere between 40 and 50% of new crop corn priced. Primarily, probably, I want to use forward cash contracts. If I'm delivering at harvest, I can use HTAs. If I've got some storage, 40 to 50% on corn, at least 50% on soybeans, in my opinion. I believe we've got to be aggressive.
Here's one more that'll lead you into the places you're headed next. James offers this one. With high prices that we're currently seeing with the crop insurance fall harvest price option, is that something we can skip this year?
I would not skip it if I'm going to forward price my 21 bushels. I want that guarantee sitting there. So let's transition out of here because I'm going to keep us on time. But I believe a lot of farmers are focused on crop insurance and they're focused on this whole idea of the government farm program. So let me catch this idea of safety nets. This is a large canyon, all right? This is not the Illinois River. This is not the Mississippi River. This is a large canyon, and the government is providing farmers safety nets. And so the bottom of the canyon is the loan rates. If nobody else will loan you money, you can always take your grain you've harvested under loan. And those changed a little bit with the 19th crop. But let's get into ARC PLC. This is the safety net. It's administered by the Farm Service Agency. It has effective reference prices. You've got less than 8 weeks to make a decision. But I want you to memorize those reference prices. Those are key to making a decision. 370 corn, cash price for the 21 crops got to be below 370. We just saw 425. Soybeans, 840. We just saw 1025. There are no PLC payments. Wheat, 550. And again, we might be close to 550. But this idea of ARC PLC is not the most important decision that we're going to make in the next 7.5 weeks. It's crop insurance. It's revenue protection. It's, am I going to add supplementals? And here comes the $65,000 question. Do I understand supplemental coverage option? And oh, by the way, there's a new tool, ECO. You've got to be focused. If there's anything that's going to separate the best growers in 21, it's going to be this group that's very focused. And they understand that my local FSA office needs to know if I'm going to make any changes. And working with FSA in a COVID age is not easy. You need to call or email the FSA office. And in Iowa, we think we're probably about 25% done. And FSA is really under the gun. So this idea of not being able to make a decision means that you're going to default. And if you haven't contacted FSA tomorrow, next week, so they can process the paperwork, and you can do this by mail or you can do this by email, then you stay in the same program that you were in 19 and 20. And you still have to enroll in the program. So doing nothing, sitting here, I think's a little crazy right now. And so let me share with you, and again, I'm in tune with, Dr. Gary Schnitke and Nick Paulson and the webinars they did, but these are US data. These are 5 major crops, and these are base acres. These are not what you plant. These are the programs that farmers enrolled. Remember that election was a 2-year election that we did last year at this time. And then we enrolled simultaneously for 19 and 20. One of these crops does not look like the other, and it's soybeans. And it's because soybean base acres rarely have ever been in the PLC program. Now, some of your listeners were probably in Arc County, all right, for some corn. And so here's the question I want to ask you. What will farmers do in the next 7.5 weeks? Will they default and stay in the same programs? And that I'm guessing, yeah, 10 or 20% won't do anything. They'll just default, and the only thing they can do would be in the program they were in 19. But I do see most of our soybean base acres staying in Arc County. I think we're going to see a shift, and I'm not saying all corn base acres, but we're going to shift a lot more of our corn base acres to Arc County because we're likely not going to trigger PLC payments. So we're defaulting because our cash prices, especially beans and corn, are going to be above the 370 corn and 840 beans. So here's the first poll question that I have for you. I want you to interact with me. And so go ahead and activate that poll. Here's what I want you to indicate. Check one box. When the smoke clears sometime in the spring of 21, what ARC PLC program will the majority of the US corn and soybean base acres be enrolled? Just check one. Again, we're making an annual decision. This is only for the 21 crop. And we're making that decision by FSA farm number, by the base acres on the farm. This has nothing to do with what you're planting in 21. This is that historical base acres. Check the one that applies. Now let's close out the poll, because what I want to know is, what do you think will happen? We'll go PLC for corn and soybeans. We'll go Ark County for corn and soybeans. We'll go PLC for corn, Ark County for soybeans. That's what we did in 19 and 20. Or where we see Ark County for corn and PLC for soybeans. Give me those totals. What do you think will be the majority of those base acres? And again, I can't see the poll. I'm not seeing the poll on my end. Can somebody give me those results?
We're working on that for you. We still have individuals that are voting right now. 62% of the vote is in, and here are the numbers. Can you see that, Steve?
No, I can't see them. Go ahead and read those off.
Okay, so PLC for corn and soybeans at 7%. Okay. Ark County for corn and PLC for soybeans at 7%. PLC for corn, Ark County for soybeans takes 26% of the poll, and Ark County for corn and soy at 60%.
Okay, and I don't disagree. I think farmers will probably keep a lot of those same acres, all right, in Ark County for soybeans. I'm 90% of all our bean base acres are going to Ark County because there's no PLC. Corn is the tougher choice, and wheat is even a tougher choice than that. So thank you for participating. I think that's what's important right now. Don't hesitate. If you think that PLC might be triggered, or PLC, you'll see there's another reason to be in PLC for corn. But I think most of our soybean base acres are probably going to Ark County. Bottom line, I don't think there's going to be a PLC or Ark County payment in 20, and I don't think there's going to be one in 21. I think you're chasing nickels and dimes off the bottom of this market if you're focused on Ark PLC. I think the focus needs to be on crop insurance. When we look at crop insurance, this is the big safety net. This is the one that covers 85%. That keeps me out of the river. This is what's really key. And so what I want you to see is really crop insurance is not that much different than it has been for the last 21 years. Is we need to make decisions. We need to notify our crop insurance agent, and we're down to 7.5 weeks. And we need to be discussing this with my crop insurance agent now. Now, there's a couple nuances. One of those is the QLO. Make sure that your agent knows that if you had a quality loss, you want to check that box. Because what the QLO does, it looks back at any sort of quality loss adjustments, and it can actually improve your APH. So if 19, you planted late, there was all sorts of quality issues, and it had to be included with crop insurance, make sure your agent knows that. Now, here come two new endorsements. And SCO really isn't new. SCO's been around since the 14 Farm Bill, but we didn't use the supplemental coverage option. And I'm going to call them supplemental and enhanced. And I want you to do the same thing, because this is an alphabet soup. And you said, why would anybody take one of these county-based products? Because the government's paying most of the premium. And so I think you want to be very focused in recognizing, so what am I getting if I take SCO? Well, you're getting coverage up to 86%. And so you are buying coverage that's capped at 86. And the supplemental is subsidized at the 65% level. But if you want to buy one of these new products, ECO, you can have coverage between 86 and 90 or 86 and 95. And that publication that I wrote, it's called SEO, ECO Endorsements, explains what I'm going to explain now. I'm going to create a visual. It's a coffee cup. All right. And so memorize this for about 5 or 10 years. This is a coffee cup. I am going to fill my coffee cup with revenue protection. That's what 95% of all our insured acres are in Iowa, and I guess they are in Illinois. I'm going to take revenue protection. I'm going to take it at the 80% level. I'm not here to argue. Could be 65, 70, 75, 80, 85%. But watch the visual. What the SCO does, it is like creamer in the cup. It fills that cup up to 86%. So I'm at 80% farm level coverage, my APHs. The other 6% is county-based revenue. If you take revenue protection, you've got a county-based revenue. And because supplemental looks a lot like Ark County, you can't elect Ark County and buy supplemental. You can only buy supplemental coverage from your crop insurance agent by March 15th if the acres on that farm, corn-based acres, are in the PLC program. PLC equals SCO. So you've got some other decisions to make besides Ark County, and there's an interaction between Ark County, all right, and SCO, supplemental. You can't be in Ark County. Those base acres cannot be in Ark County and buy SCO. It's probably another reason that we might keep some of these corn base acres in PLC, not to collect a payment, because I'm interested in having a little higher coverage level, and the government pays 65% of my premium. Here's the new kid on the block. It's a coffee cup. I put 80% revenue protection. It's the same coffee I drink every morning, but I can also choose to buy enhanced coverage. The enhanced coverage does not cover that gap between 80 and 86%. So I don't have coverage up to 86%. I only have farm level coverage. And that farm level coverage, all right, is capped. What the enhanced does, it allows me to reduce my deductible. So my deductible is possibly 10% or 5%. It's the shallow loss coverage. And I'm not saying buy it or don't buy it. I'm just saying it's a tool. Price it. And it doesn't matter if you're an ARC or PLC. You can still buy the enhanced product. And a lot of this depends on how much money are you willing to spend and how much money is the government subsidizing. And so again, my head's around crop insurance now. This is more important in all likelihood than ARC County or PLC. I want to make sure I understand in working with my crop insurance agent of whether I'm in optional units or enterprise units. And in some cases, maybe there is an advantage. If I'm in enterprise units and all my fields are combined in the county for that particular crop, corn, I'm well subsidized. And should I buy supplemental? Because when I move from 80 to 85, the government's paying 53% of that premium, but I know the government's paying 65% of the premium if I want to buy supplemental. So I think this will cause some farmers to stop and think, and you should do that this winter. This is the winter to learn these tools. This is the winter to understand that marketing is important, but so too is understanding these other crop risk management strategies. So I'm
Steve,
never leaving this. Go ahead.
Steve, there's a question here that I really feel like the timing of it, I know we've got breaks built in for this, but I think the timing of the question is good given on what you just suggested. The question comes from Lee. What are your thoughts on taking ARC County versus taking PLC with RP 75% versus SCO? SCO would have basically the same band of coverage as ARC County, but has a much tighter reference price using the spring price instead of ARC County price. Plus, you have the harvest price option with SCO.
Okay, that is a great question for your crop insurance agent, because what you're going to want to do is you want to create this interaction at a 75% RP. If I buy 75% RP, all right, am I an enterprise or optional units? Stop. Ask the tough questions. Okay. If am I going to take PLC on those acres so I can also buy supplemental? These are not things that we can answer in a 1-hour webinar. I want to make sure that that is a great question, but that is a question that you're interacting with your crop insurance agent today, tomorrow. They won't know exactly what these premiums are going to do, but I want to make sure that you understand that the 7.5 weeks is going to be over. March Madness is going to happen. It's going to be nothing to do with basketball. It's going to be that farmers are going to procrastinate and try to pull the rabbit out of the hat in late February and March. Let's ask those tough questions now. So good question. Thank you. I really want to stay focused on the more important question, marketing. This is where farmers are going to make the most money. It's not ARC PLC. It's not crop insurance. Most of the money to be made is going to be made on improving marketing. These are just examples of what I believe, and I've worked with over 10,000 farmers in my career directly. These are what I think the good marketers are doing that separates them from everybody else. They are multitasking. They understand how all of these tools interact, and the fact that the crop insurance is probably a more important decision than is an ARC PLC, because likely ARC PLC isn't going to pay me anything in 21. These prices are too high. I've got to be in a county with a really low yield to think that ARC PLC gives me anything, and I don't get that until October of 22. Here's where the risk management takes place. This is where the rubber meets the road. These are the farmers that are making money, buying farmland, paying income tax. They've been able to put all of these things together in one place and one time, and they do it every year. And I think the key is knowing your cost, calculating your APH break-evens, and communicating with your crop insurance agent. But the importance of having a written plan. So again, I'm not discounting this 75% RP. Should I leave the harvest price on? Should I buy supplemental? It's a part of this bigger risk management plan. And I think marketing is the key. And the reality is that if I choose revenue protection, and I'll use corn, revenue protection is a farm-based, my APH, not the county. Most farmers want that decision determined by their actual production history. But here's where I think we've got to be aware that we're going to create extremely large revenue guarantees. These guarantees that have been down here around 620, 630 at an 85% level, and I'm not telling you what level of coverage or unit structure. I'm just saying I think it's really important that you recognize that crop insurance is going to be unique. You're going to pay more for it, but you're paying more for it because that final spring price, which I don't know, is going to be about 13 to 15% higher than it was last year. Higher premiums, higher revenue guarantees, and then you decide deductible. If you don't want to use supplemental, buy it up to 86%, but you're using a county level product, or you don't want to buy enhanced between that 86 and 90 or 86 and 95, that's your decision. But these successful marketers tend to do this. They tend to take revenue protection at high levels, 80 to 85%, and they pre-harvest sell. And a lot of these farmers are already selling the 21 corn crop, and they're selling at levels that they've not had a chance to sell at probably since 2013. And so here's the marketing strategies. If you do commit bushels to delivery, HTA, forward cash contracts, then I think that's where you leverage crop insurance, revenue protection. If you don't want to deliver the bushels, fine. Then you can figure out, is that going to be a hedge? Is that going to be an option? And how are those going to fit? And then the price guarantee, I'm a big proponent of leaving the price on. I know, but if you're going to sell more than 30 or 40% of your corn committed to delivery, leave the harvest price on. I know you can save a few dollars, but the government's paying the majority of your premium. Leave the harvest price on just in case, just like this year, just like in 12, just in case I've got to deliver those bushels, I'm only going to get the spring price, and the government is subsidizing this decision. There'll always be basis risk, but I don't see that unless we have major weather events across a large portion of the Corn Belt. And you need to plant the crop because there's that prevented planting. If you can't plant the crop, then you only collect 55% of the revenue guarantee. So I'm wrapping us up, but I'm going to say marketing and pre-harvest marketing. In addition to crop insurance and the changes that I want to make. And then third, ARC PLC. I want to go ahead and get those decisions out of the way. But crop marketing, I believe, is key. We are at price levels we've not seen in 6 years. So we've got to understand this is up to me. This isn't about somebody from a university or a market analyst or a commodity broker. Do you think futures are going to go up or down? And what do you think basis is going to do? Strengthen? We've got extremely strong basis, strongest January basis I've seen since probably 2013 and that short 2012 crop. And so here's 12 marketing tools. If you understand this matrix, you don't need me, all right? You understand that you are managing risk. But here's where I think it's important. What is your bias? If you think futures are going up and basis is going to weaken, you'd pick one of those tools. In my opinion, I'm concerned, especially new crop, that futures are going to go down, and by fall, we're going to see a weaker basis. We're going to go back to normal. Maybe it's, 10 under Decatur, where, man, I remember last fall it was 20 over there for a little while. And so you've got to manage simultaneously the futures price as well as the cash price via basis. I'm probably in this camp. I see a stronger basis, especially between now and August, but then basis weakening very quickly. And if I can plant a crop early and harvest it early, this really fits soybeans that I heard the plans to plant early. Maybe I can capture that September basis rather than October basis. But I like these non-roll hedge to arrive contracts. I still have to deliver, but I can't roll into another marketing year. And now if I've got 50% of my new crop corn, I can still buy put options. I can still put a floor under the market. And again, if you have no debt, the corn and soybeans are on your farm and you want to wait because you think the basis will strengthen, I agree. I think the strongest basis of the year could easily sit out here in April or May when everybody's busy, but I don't know that the futures prices will be as high as they are now. And so learn to use a variety of marketing tools is my message. Jeff, let's move to that last poll, all right? Check all that apply. As a result of a 1-hour webinar that I attended on the 21st day of January, which of these particular strategies do I need to pursue? You can check 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or all 5 of them. Just take 30 seconds and check which one you want to be very focused on, especially as we head into March 15th. That's just 7 weeks from Monday. I need to make a decision. Need to work with FSA, need to work with my crop insurance agent. Am I looking at these supplemental policies? Am I looking at these endorsements, these county-based endorsements that just add on top of my farm-based products? Am I going to pre-harvest market? I think these are all keys that I want to be multitasking. And even in a webinar, I think I can discern. So let's finish that up and close those out. I'm curious as to what the responses are, and then feel free to type in questions as we're heading into the late fourth quarter. What is it that I'm very focused on? And I really want to hear from Steve Johnson. Next week, it's Eric Snodgrass. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to come back and you'll be able to reframe these. I'll take the ARC PLC and crop insurance. We'll have a couple crop insurance specialists that are on from Farm Credit Illinois. And of course, Matt Bennett will be on. And I'll defer Matt on many of these marketing issues. But I think this is the winter that I want to be very focused. I don't want to let some of these opportunities slip, and I sure don't want to procrastinate. So let's close that out, Jeff, and then we'll come back and let's field some of those questions.
With a high percentage of the vote in, I'm going to take you from bottom to top, Steve. Supplemental policies at 36%. The SCO and or the ECO endorsements come in at 44%. Multi-peril crop insurance took 57%. Finalizing ARC and PLC at 63%. And if there's been impact, you can measure it this. The bottom of the poll is the top of the number, the pre-harvest marketing of the 21 crop at 92% of those who were participating here today.
That's awesome. That is a touchdown, Iowa State. The fact is that we've got to be. Oh, we're in the top 10, by the way. So just to let you know, we had our best football season in history this year. But the reality is we've got to be on our game. This is probably not the winter to take off. And let's see what the spring prices bring. I know, it's dry, and maybe we won't be able to plant a crop. Well, that's what we thought about Brazil for the last 3 months, and they're going to produce a large crop. Not a record, but they planted more acres, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to plant more acres. Let's make sure that we understand that these are important decisions. And these aren't decisions I can wait till late March. It's not like a bag of seed. It's not like fertilizer. It's like, these are things that I want to get done and I want to get out of the way. And so I'm probably spending a lot of time on FarmDoc. And again, a week ago today, they just updated this what if tool. And so you just go in and click on state and county, and it'll plug in the 5 years worth of county yields, and you can play what if games. But don't spend a lot of time on ARC PLC unless you interact that supplemental product with the PLC base acres. That's what we're doing at Iowa State. I'm retired, so I'm not doing the public meetings. I'm doing webinars and private meetings, and hope to return to Illinois someday. If you want to understand ARC PLC, you've had 7 years. Really hasn't changed much. Reference prices have always been $370 corn, $840 beans, $550 wheat. You can go study all you want, but this is going to be an annual decision starting in 21, 1 year election, and then enroll. If you don't make a decision, all you can do is enroll in the program that you were in. Again, working with your local FSA office via phone and mail or email, you can get this done. And then lastly, it's been my pleasure, again, year number 7, being a part of your Fielding Forward programs. I really enjoy the opportunity, and I enjoy the opportunity to return when the coast is clear to do these in-person meetings, but in the meantime, I'll continue supporting you in any way that I can. My email still works. So if you want to contact me, but don't email me and say, what's the market's going to do? That's not my role. But as we put a risk management plan in play for 2021, these opportunities are opportunities that 6 months ago you would never have imagined. And usually we don't get these opportunities that last for very long periods of time. So with that, let me field a few questions and we'll wrap up Fielding Forward week 1. Again, Eric will be back next week talking about weather, and then we'll have a panel discussion. 2 crop insurance specialists, Matt Bennett and myself, will be back in 2 weeks on February 4th. So Jeff, what you got? I'm ready. I'm sitting down and I've got my coffee cup.
Okay, so let's bump heads here for just a little bit and sympathize, if you will. I mean, when we were planting the crop back earlier this spring, and it was in the early vegetative stage, $8 soybeans, and that's red ink. And then the market, surprisingly, as we start to harvest, hits $10, and we sell. And we think that's good because we sold at a profit. And then $14 for the same crop. So looking ahead to 21, you say to yourself, look, I realize this 1170 might be a profit right now, but if it moves higher, I want it. So with 92% of our respondents saying the pre-market is an advantage, is there not an urgency now to do something rather than set and pray?
I think there is an urgency. I don't know that I've got to do something today, but number one, I need to understand my costs, and I'm going to take my total estimated cost by crop by rotation, divide it by my APH. So I think the important piece is putting my pencil and paper or my computer and spreadsheet to work. Like I said, I'm working with a lot of farmers that are approaching 40 to 50% of their new crop corn's already priced, and no, they didn't price it today. They've been scaling into this, 410, 420, 430, 440, 450. It's to try to create a good overall average cash price, but it's not to try to hit the high. Jeff, there's the problem. Our egos start to take over. So we're still feeling lost from last year. And so I can't sell any of next year's. Well, you better think about at least buying a put option if you're not going to commit those bushels to delivery. But then I pay a premium. And yes, I don't have those bushels priced. I like to reverse that. I like to commit my bushels to delivery, leveraging crop insurance, and then making sure I've got adequate revenue protection in play, and then making sure I'm matching my on-farm storage capacity. I just don't want a lot of these extra bushels sitting in commercial storage unpriced next fall and winter. That is not a good strategy. So here's where the options work. Buying a put option, putting a floor under the market. If you want to sell cash and you want to buy a cheap out of the money call option, no problem. But yes, there is a sense of urgency. I probably need to get something done. In my opinion, I probably want to do it before March 31st. I think the prospective planning report on March 31st will start to indicate these extra bean and corn acres. And then it will come down to weather. And again, as La Nina fades, we likely will be at ENSO neutral by spring. And I can tell you from Iowa, we are getting timely snows and rains about every 3 days. So where we were extremely dry 2 weeks ago, we're starting to hear farmers talk about the tiles running again. So don't think that we can't catch up. It's slow in the winter, but we could have much better growing conditions than what you anticipate now just because it's dry.
I have to believe personally that the Brazilian crop probably won't be as big as was forecast early this year, but I think we stand an awfully good chance if those rains pick up of being bigger than last year and still being a record. I had a question that came earlier, and they were talking about your slide number 3, Steve, and it had to do with ethanol usage. In the twilight hours of the Trump administration, 3 more SREs were granted. That's another 260 million bushels of ethanol that won't be ground. I'm picking up this story from Growth Energy and Emily Score. The SREs granted by the Trump administration at 88, totaling 4.3 billion gallons of biofuel. Is there not a risk of the ethanol grind being lower and that affecting the carryover stocks for this marketing year?
Absolutely. You know, USDA last week lowered the ethanol number. And people argued, wait a second, we're going to all be driving and we're going to produce more ethanol. 24 ethanol plants have already slowed in the United States. So while we have these crude oil prices, again, that have rallied up around $52, $53 a barrel, I really question of those ethanol plants' profitability. If they're buying your corn at $5.50 a bushel, I doubt they're making money. I think it's not going to be just the SREs. I think it's going to be the ethanol plant margins. So I got to believe that we get into the summer and we think somebody's running out of corn. I think that ethanol plant's going to go down for maintenance. Same way with soybean plants. Be careful that as we get into July, August, that we might see ethanol crush slow and we might see bean crush slow until we can get our hands on new crop bushels. And so there's that strategy is maybe the early harvest, or excuse me, the early harvest. Maybe those are the bushels I want to deliver and get away from my farm and generate cash flow. I think that opportunity will be out there, but I want to make sure I've managed the futures price risk, and then I can manage the basis risk. I just want to avoid the October basis. I'm concerned we're going to send basis back to more normal levels by October in the gut shot of harvest.
Well, I've got a real corker for you when we finish our last question, but this isn't it. This one comes from Russ. He said, I can sell $10 new crop soybeans for the 2022 crop year. $10 new crop 2022. Is this wise?
I think I would not be afraid to sell a few bushels. I think that's probably going to be if you would, HTA. I don't think I want to use a futures hedge and then have to put money into my brokerage account. But, you know, my goal would be to make sure that if I'm going to sell 22 corner beans, either one, I want to make sure I'm over $4 cash corn and $10 cash soybeans. And maybe we're at 5 or 10% of the 22 crop. But again, we don't know exactly what 22 brings, but I got to believe in response to what we've seen the last 5 months, we're just going to see a lot more acres planted in the Northern Hemisphere. And so I think getting something sold for 22, it has a lot to do with your cost of production. If you're down there around 330, that's our average cost in Iowa, no profit. And beans are going to come in around 870. Yeah, I think taking some risk off the table. It's not about selling at the high. It's creating a good overall average price that is hopefully 10, 20, 30% return on investment. There's the key. What is my return based on normal weather, normal production, normal acres?
Good chance that $10 is black ink. Okay, so here's one, and from another site, or one that you have available, comes from Chuck. Do you have a recommendation for a written marketing plan template to work from?
Sure. It's on the screen that's in front of me right now. It's Iowa State. It's Ag Decision Maker. It's the Iowa Commodity Challenge. We've been writing for 10 years. We've created examples of what a blank marketing plan would look like. Email me and I'll send you a blank. It's a 5-step process. There's nothing magic. It's going to include time objectives and price objectives. And there's where I think a lot of farmers miss. They get so locked in on price that they miss this time. And that time tends to be April, May, June. And again, I'm not saying we won't rally in April, May, June. I'm just going to be surprised that these new crop corn and bean prices are at the levels we're seeing now in April, May, June. So yes, ISU, Iowa Commodity Challenge, 15 videos. We update that every week on Wednesday. We do basis tracking tables, and you'll see me use a marketing plan template. So a lot of my videos, Google Steve Johnson, Iowa State, you'll see a lot of my videos, we use a market plan template, 5-step process And I think that's critical, is getting this in writing and then sharing it with my lender, with my commodity broker, my grain merchandiser, my market analyst. I think that's what separates the really good marketers. They're very focused and they are accountable.
So this note comes from Gavin, and I'm not sure that I'm seeing all the words of this question, so I'll share with you what I see, and then we can interpret together. Forward marketing 40 to 50% is more than their prevent plant guarantee.
Yeah, I agree. I recognize that. And so if you're concerned, you're farming the river bottom and you're concerned that it's going to get wet and that you might not be able to plant that crop, be careful of committing bushels to delivery. If you're on light soils and you're not worried about prevent plant, you're worried about summer drought, then maybe you don't use HTAs and forward cash contracts. You might be a good candidate for buy to put option and putting a floor under the market and then not committing those bushels to delivery. So again, there's a variety of marketing tools that are out here. I think this is the first time I've heard prevent plant, concerns for prevent plant, and this is my 12th webinar. And so the fact is that even the farmers in North Dakota and Minnesota and Wisconsin aren't even talking about prevent plant. I think there's less concern for prevent plant, and it's based on the fact that very few of these soil profiles, even in the northern belt, are saturated right now.
Well, Steve, there's one thing I've learned out of this conference and being here. There's a good reason why I'm not on television and in radio. So here's the fastball for you, right down the middle, the 3-2 smoker in the bottom of the ninth. Would you care to comment on NASS crop reports and why they seem to miss the target by wider margins?
Sure, I'd be glad to. I've been a volunteer for NASS for 17 years. I will no longer be that just because I'm retired. NASS is still the best in the world. They're the gold standard. NASS is having trouble when we have quality issues, just like we did with the 19 crop. And I'll be honest with you, the 20 crop, it's hard to estimate production and yield until the bushels disappear. This year, we're going to have some test weight issues, especially the drought and the heat stress crop. So NASS is still operating in that 1 to 1.5% margin of error. I would not replace NASS with anybody in the world. But the reality is that it is tough to know how many bushels were there until we see the bushels disappear. It's just like your grain bin. Go out and measure your grain bin at harvest, all right? Put them under loan, and then go out and see how many bushels were actually there. If you're within 1 to 1.5%, like NASS is for the entire nation, you're still doing pretty well. So I think a lot of this is they use statistically sound tools, but the reality is trying to come up with a number, a production number, a yield number, a number of acres harvested. Those are moving targets. And I don't know that those will change. That's why sometimes we get these surprises like we did on September 30th. I know it's frustrating, but move to Brazil or move to China and you'll see how good NASS is.
I certainly don't want their job of trying to estimate and to work through the things that they do. Okay, here is the last pass through the field. Last question, Steve, before we wrap up. The question comes and says, when you say cash sales now, 40% corn, 50% soy sold, do you mean the expected crop, the TA, or the guarantee?
The guarantee, my APH bushels. If I'm at 65% level of coverage, I want to take my TA APH times 65%. I don't want to get out here when I'm not going to use an 80 or 85% TA APH. So let's make sure that we understand it's my APH bushels, and then I'm leveraging revenue protection. I want to understand that revenue protection is still that farm-based product. So it's my APH bushels that I am willing to price and I'm willing to commit to delivery. If they're early harvested, maybe a forward cash contract, but probably an HTA. And I probably will want to make sure I'm locking up that basis if I know I can harvest some of those bushels in September, early September. Corn or beans. I think there will be unique basis opportunities, but let's make sure I'm managing the futures price risk so I can capture those basis opportunities in early harvest.
Well, Steve, if we were in the audience, I'd ask for a round of applause. Instead, I'm just going to give you the big high five here, and thank you for taking time to be a part of our program today. I want to thank the folks who have been dialed in here that for your questions and your participation on the day. Steve, thanks again. We wish you safety and health, and looking forward to stirring it up when we get together on the 4th of February. I'm going to be right here in the mixing pot and putting you and Matt head to head on things. We'll know more about weather. We'll know more about production as we get to the 4th and making those decisions. We'll also be in that critical month for establishing a crop insurance price. Again, next Thursday, Eric Snodgrass will be right here. And then on the 4th, Matt Bennett and Steve Johnson and some of our folks in crop insurance. All right, I need to remind you of this. We have a survey. It's going to pop up right after the webinar, and then there'll also be a follow-up email. Also, if you only caught a part of the program or you did dot off at some portion or another and you'd like to be able to go back and watch it, or you'd like to share it with other folks, you can do that. It's going to be on the Farm Credit website, and it should be up there within the next 24 hours, depending upon how broadband works for us. If your broadband says like this, it may take a little longer, but that's okay. Now, the last thing that we have is a door prize, and it is a really nice pair of AirPods. And they're there and they're for the taking, and it belongs to James Bellum, I'm sorry, JamesBellm. Okay, that's what I have, and hopefully we'll be in contact. I'm looking to Amy now. She's sharing with us. Amy's going to be in contact with you, and we'll look at making sure that those AirPods are delivered. Again, thanks again for your participation in this Fielding Forward meeting. Next week, same time, same place, wherever you have and the ability to have. If you enjoyed this, you obviously are aware that marketing is important, but weather is going to play a critical role over the next 30, 45, 60 days. And there's not a better person on weather than Eric Snodgrass. Eric will be here in his entertaining and informing self. And then again on the 4th, when we're all back together talking about markets again. For all the folks of Farm Credit Illinois, I'm Jeff Nalley. Have a great day.